Everybody, we have started recording. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a slide deck with you all that's kind of going to give you just an overview of some of the existing grant programs that we have at ODA. Some of them are already open. And then I'll go over some new ones that are going to be coming open in the next few months. And then we'll have plenty of time, to answer any questions about that. I imagine many of you are interested in the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Grant Program, so I have another slide deck. We'll go a little bit deeper into some of the details of that program. We are going to be opening that fairly soon, and I want to make sure everybody feels like they have some of the questions answered early on in the process. So yeah, let me get started here, and I'm probably going to go off camera because I'm looking at 3 different screens. So please feel free also to, I won't be monitoring the chat, but feel free to use the chat if you have questions as they come up. I'll also pause after a few of these slides. I tend to move pretty quickly so that you can ask questions about some of the different grants I'm going to discuss today. Right. Okay, so hopefully you could someone just let me know if they can see my screen? There should be a green PowerPoint slide up there.
Yep, we see it.
Yep. Awesome. All right. So like I said, I'm going to talk about some grant resources to grow your food and agriculture business. And we are doing these calls by region. We are going to be hosting more calls coming up. I think there'll be a press release going out about this in the next week or so. They are going to be regional calls. That doesn't mean that you can't call in from another region and get some of your questions answered, but we did think that by giving them a regional focus, it would I think catalyze conversation and help you all, I think through some of the connecting the dots around your different projects. So before I start talking about some of the ODA grant programs, I did want to make an announcement about, many of you probably do know about the USDA Regional Food Business Centers, but I did want to mention them because they really will be critical. They will be a critical resource and partner on some of these grants that are coming down the pike at the state level. And I'm sorry, I've got someone coming in here. So the regional food business centers, these are 12 new centers that the USDA just recently established over the summer. So these are very new initiatives across the country. You've probably heard a little bit about them already. Oregon is part of the top dark green center, the Northwest and Rocky Mountain Center, with 5 other states. And so essentially what we're going to be doing, the centers have basically 3 main responsibilities over 5 years. The center's purpose is to support a more resilient and competitive food system by providing localized assistance to local and regional supply chain, linking producers to wholesalers, and basically helping them open up markets. The center is really going to be designed to support individual businesses, particularly small farms and food businesses who haven't historically been able to tap into a lot of resources, both offered at the federal level as well as the state. So myself and Lauren Gwynn at the Oregon State University are the co-leads for the state of Oregon. And very similarly in the other 5 states in our region, there's similar partnership between departments of agriculture, extension offices, and some other kind of key service providers in food business and regional food system development. So the centers are going to have 3 main responsibilities over these next 5 years. And I will say that for our center, we have a $30 million program in the Pacific Northwest and Rocky Mountain Plains. And those funds are going to come out in various ways over these next 5 years. But these are the 3 main responsibilities that USDA wants us to work on. One of those is coordination. So they want the states and the centers to basically be better coordinated with resources, not only from the federal government, but also at the state and local level. And they'd like a lot of that to happen through building better relationships and trust with groups who haven't, again, been able to tap into some of these resources in the past. So really what they're looking for here is more transparency between the feds and the states, and then also the partners on the ground. So this may look like more constant communication, more similar messaging between all of us, and you being able to show up and actually get questions answered in real time when there are different grant programs or other programs that come out from USDA in the state that you might want to take advantage of. They're also expecting us to offer quite a lot of technical assistance over the next 5 years to meet the specific needs of emerging farms and food businesses where we've fallen short in the past. And some of this looks like developing new technical assistance, but some of this also looks like funding existing technical assistance that's already out there, that's already meeting the needs, but just needs more support and more funding to do the work. This is going to be around business development, financing, marketing, product development, a lot of different kind of buckets of technical assistance. The third one is capacity building. This is the section of the business centers that's going to be focused exclusively on providing capital for farm businesses and for farms and food businesses. So those are capacity building is going to be the Business Builder Grant Program, which maybe some of you have heard about. But those are going to be small grants that are given directly to these individual businesses to help them with whatever it is that's part of their business growth plan. So I just wanted to mention that this is our so the USDA is asking every center to have its own web presence. This is our page. If you go to the USDA Regional Food Business Center webpage, we will have the West and the Northwest and Rocky Mountain Center will have its own page. This is our address up here. So if you go to that address, it'd be great if you could sign up for newsletters so that you can get announcements about different programs and technical assistance that events and things like that in the six state region over these next 5 years. You can also submit specific technical assistance requests. And again, we've been kind of up and running for about 6 months. So a lot of this is in development. It's been very iterative. The center meets once a month. And we hear a lot from our theme teams, which is what I'm going to talk about now. So this is sort of the structure of what our business center looks like out here in the Pacific Northwest. These are the regional leads. Colorado State University, Oregon State, and USDA AMS are essentially they're the principal operators for the center. So they're going to be managing all the administration and funding and getting that out. And then you'll see the state teams in the bottom right-hand corner there. And again, Oregon's state teams are Department of Ag, which is myself, and then Lauren Gwynn at Oregon State University. And then we've recently hired a state coordinator for the regional food business centers, and that's Tanya Murray, who has previously been with Oregon Tilth and just got started as our state coordinator. And so in Oregon, we're going to be working on these 4 themes in the right-hand corner. And so those are actually, I should say that the first one is not only meat, but it's animal supply capacity. So seafood and fish have been added to that theme area. And so the purpose of that theme is actually to do and offer a lot of upskilling and workforce development for the animal supply chain in the Pacific Northwest. This really originated with a lot of the Plain and Northwest states, basically because of a lot of our animal supply, mostly around meat and cattle and beef, and because some of us now have state meat inspection programs. But there was a lot of comments from Oregon and Washington about building in seafood into this theme area. So there should be resources coming out to support seafood or opportunities to engage in this conversation. The second one is creating diverse markets for climate resilient agriculture. So there's a lot of interest from producers who are practicing climate resilient methods on their farm, and they're part of regenerative agriculture in developing markets for pulses and cover crops and beans and legumes. And so there's going to be a couple partners that are leading the technical assistance on that aspect. There's one on connecting and scaling food entrepreneurs. This one's really about helping food businesses, value-added consumer packaged good businesses that haven't really been able to break into a lot of the regional trade shows and trade activities in the Pacific Northwest. And so we've got the Food Innovation Center and the Food Corridor out of Colorado as the theme leads for this activity. And then the fourth one is really around right sizing and infrastructure. So a lot of, as you probably know, with a lot of the work that you all do, not every organization or farm or business is kind of operating with the same scale, same capital, same resources, and can't always metabolize funding very quickly. And so the Oregon Food Hub, Sydney DeLuna is one of the co-leads on this activity and is going to be taking a look at lots of different funding patchworks that can help businesses grow and thrive. And really, what should those be? When should you take on debt? What should your cash flow look like in order to manage taking on that kind of risk? So, and then USDA is also asking us to work with these specific groups on the left-hand corner here. And so there is a steering committee in Oregon that's made up of a lot of these different groups that's going to be giving us a lot of input on what the technical assistance really looks like for Oregon and who benefits from that. So any questions about the regional food business centers before I kind of turn over to some of the grant programs that ODA is going to be offering?
One question, Amy, this is Ben. I'm curious with the underserved stakeholder advisors, like has that steering committee been set? If there's folks in those underserved categories that are really a part of food systems, do you want us to share or make introductions? What's the best way to connect advisors to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there were advisors from a few different groups: the Oregon Veteran Farmers, Black Food Sovereignty Coalition, Adelante Mujeres, and some others that were consulted early on in the creation and design of the Regional Food Business Center and Oregon's proposal. I think at this point, what I'm hearing is that, what we're asking Tanya to do is reconnect with some of the partners who originally, offered their commitment and support for the center, and then bring those conversations back to us so we can decide on how to continue to engage different groups. I don't think Oregon will have a steering committee per se, but I think what we're going to do is probably have a lot of different groups that represent these communities giving us input along the way, or even, I think what's most likely to happen is for the center to be funneling funds to these existing groups to continue to do a lot of what they're already doing or to build out some of their programming. So I would say the best thing to do around that, I guess that question, Ben, is to connect with Tanya at some point, and I'm happy to put you in touch with her if you don't know her, because this is something we are wanting to be careful about, and we want to make sure that the way that we're offering assistance really resonates with these groups and is of their benefit. So. Yeah, I think at this point we're asking Tanya to do some of those, go back and have some of the conversations with what would help from the center look like for you, and how can we use our resources to build your programs and build your organizations.
Thank you.
Yeah. It looks like someone else maybe you've got. Okay, someone was knocking on the door. Any other questions about the RFBC? All right. Well, I encourage you to go to that website that I mentioned in the previous slide. And again, I think I sent these slides out, but I'm happy to do it again, and get signed up for the center's newsletter. If some of you are going to the Small Farms Conference in February, there will be some information about the center, hopefully some more resources that are going to be coming down the pike will be announced then as well. But if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Tanya, and we can make sure to help. Okay, so I'm going to turn us over to start talking about some of the existing grant programs at ODA. And some of these are already open, some of these are about to open. And then we're going to come back to this one after I go through some of these, just kind of give you a, kind of a topical look at them. And then, of course, if you have questions about the other grants, we can use this time to clarify any of that. But so the same time that the USDA announced the regional food business centers, they also announced this pot of funding from the Food System Transformation Framework called the Resilient Food System Infrastructure. So, my acronym soup bowl is pretty much like flowing over right now, but this is this new pot of money that accompanied the RFBC. And so at the time, what USDA's strategy was, and I think still is that they wanted to make investments in regional food systems and local food systems. And they wanted to do that both at the individual level with businesses and farms, but also within the middle of the supply chain so that we can make sure there's efficiencies there to actually start picking up these emerging businesses and farms and their products. So that's really what the emphasis of the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Project is. And so these funds are going to be available for groups of producers or processors, nonprofit organizations, local governments, tribal governments. They're also available for institutions like schools, universities, and hospitals. We have a lot of schools in Eastern Oregon, for example, who warehouse for other schools because they don't have storage. And so the idea is that, upgrades that are needed, equipment that's needed to process or package or hold product, cold storage, that kind of stuff. These funds can be helped to kind of stand up those physical projects. There's going to be two tracks for this grant program. One of them is a simplified equipment grant. We're going to go over the details of that a little bit later. But that's going to be asks anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000, and that's going to be for basically what it says, only equipment. And then the second track will be the infrastructure projects. And those projects will range from $100,000 to $2 million. Oregon does have about $5 million available for this entire program. That includes both tracks. So, we've had a lot of questions from producers and companies have said, well, if I put in a $2 million request, are you likely to fund it? Well, it depends, right, on the competition and the strength of other proposals. Obviously, ODA is going to have preference for seeing a lot of different geographic areas being able to utilize these funds too. So anyway, I would say, yeah, it depends. So it's just something that, we really can't say for certain whether we would fund a $2 million project or not. The other thing about these funds is they will be disbursement based. So this is, again, something that we have fought really hard for at the state level, is to actually be able to provide these funds up front to help overcome that barrier for some of the low and no capital producers. A lot of these grants are reimbursement based, and companies and farms, don't have the funds, the capital to put those funds up front and wind up taking on considerable debt to do so. So this will be disbursement based, and I'm still waiting to hear from our program lead on this about exactly how much that will be. But it could be anywhere from 50 to 75% of the funds up front. The grants will open in January. The infrastructure project opens January 1st. That application opens January 1st. It'll be open to the end of February. And then the simplified one, I'm hearing that we may open that one sooner than February 1st, but we will still leave it open till the end of February. And then Gabrielle Ugaldi, who's our specialty crop block grant manager, maybe some of you may know her. She's actually serving right now in terms of managing this grant. We are going to be hiring a program manager for this grant very soon because we don't have a lot of grant administration capacity at ODA, so we're all sort of jumping in and trying to help each other out. So there's, if you want to get on the email list for this grant announcement, which again is coming soon, send an email to the Resilient System Grant at oda.oregon.gov. Send an email there and we'll get you on our listserv. You can also see some more of the details of the grant, including some fact sheets that, I'd love for you to hand out to others. We have those available in English, Spanish, and Swahili about the grant program, and those fact sheets are on that short link or on that website there. I'm not going to open it up for questions on that grant just yet, just because we're going to spend a good chunk of time on it. So just you can put it in the chat box or just write it down if you have one, and we'll get to it in a few moments. I did also want to mention that the USDA Specialty Crop Block Grant is currently open. I think some of you have a lot of familiarity with this grant program. Again, Gabrielle oversees this this grant, but eventually the purpose of the purpose of it is to enhance the competitiveness of U.S. specialty crops, which are tree nuts, fruits, vegetables, nursery crops, cut flowers, herbs, basically all foods you can eat, and then there are some commodities that are allowable too. But the purpose of the funds are to help market, research, and promote the consumption of specialty crops. These projects must often support more than one producer, individual, or organization. And you can see some of the other eligible groups there: nonprofits, government entities, producer associations, and more. I think some of you've received these funds in the past. We have about $2 million for this. Well, we have about $2 million. We had about $2 million last year, and essentially it's about the same this year for 2024. And this is a reimbursement grant through the USDA. So unfortunately, we can't do this one in a disbursement base, but matching is strongly recommended, although not required for this grant. And I did forget to mention on the RFSI grant that there is a matching requirement. So we will go over that when we get into the details. And this grant will close on January 31st. And then these grant terms are a little bit longer than some of our other ones. So these are 2.5 years, and you can see the award range there from $25,000 to $175,000. And then I did drop in a picture here of Willamette Farm and Food Coalition. This is their current grantee with Specialty Crop. And they're working with many partners in the Eugene area and throughout Lane County to bring awareness to a lot of the diverse crops that grow in that region and encourage the consumption of them. So, I think these funds are really great to use. I think especially for prioritizing the promotion and consumption of Oregon specialty crops. That's really where a lot of the funds go for this program. And then a lot of the funds go for research. We provide a lot of these specialty crop dollars to OSU to do crop research and field trials and things like that, which I think go hand in hand eventually with the promotion of them. Okay, I did want
Amy, just to confirm on the previous
Yeah.
Grant opportunity. So seafood would not be included in that specialty crop block
That's
grant, correct? Okay,
That's
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, and then here is the Farm to School Producer Equipment and Infrastructure Grant. So Oregon this is one of the most unique grants in the country, and I'll tell you for a couple reasons. One is that there's many farm to school grant programs in the country in many different states. There are very few where those funds go directly to producers to help them with overcoming some of the costs of equipment and infrastructure upgrades to get products in a form that works for schools. So this is a pretty unique grant because it also funds everything that happens pre-harvest as well. A lot of the other grant programs I've mentioned today are specifically for post-harvest. And this is also, it should say this is also eligible for seafood, the Farm to School Producer Grant. So, a lot of the equipment that's necessary for harvesting, for planting, cultivators, some tractor amenities, some of the things that you might need on a fishing vessel, could be allowable equipment. Unfortunately, like things like fishing boats and tractors themselves are not eligible for these funds. But, if they're, as long as they're related to the school market, and the infrastructure or the equipment is allowable that way. So anyone who borrows, leases, rents, or owns land, where crops are cultivated or livestock is raised are eligible. Seafood harvesters, fishers, they're eligible. Oregon food manufacturers are eligible for these funds. And we have $500,000 in this current biennium. Oh, good. Is Gabrielle on? I think she is. We have $500,000 for this biennium, and this is a disbursement-based grant as well. We are going to open this grant in January of 2023, and there is a tiered matching program requirement for this. So if you have more than 5 years of selling to schools or other entities, doesn't have to be schools, but there are early care, Head Start, summer food programs that are participating in the farm to school program. If you have more than 5 years of selling to them, there's a 20% match. And then if you have no experience selling to schools or those other groups, it's a 10% match. And that can be both cash and in kind. Any questions about this one? Okay. And then the last grant I'll talk about that's open right now is the Oregon Meat Processing Grant. So as I mentioned earlier, Oregon has a fairly new state meat inspection program, which basically gives the opportunity for meat processors to get state certified so that they can participate in interstate commerce. That means they can basically sell to retail or wholesale as long as it's within the state boundaries. And so this gives them the opportunity to make some equipment upgrades or physical improvements to their spaces. It even provides funding for technical assistance as well. And we have $8 million available. This is a state-funded grant. Again, this one is disbursement based, and the facilities can request up to $750,000, and there is no match requirement. So we do have, this is based on, we're trying to alleviate some of the bottlenecking that is occurring in Oregon due to meat slaughter and animal slaughter. And so, this, theoretically, this is going to help with some of that. We already have some firms that are now under state meat inspection and able to handle some of the smaller volumes and throughput of smaller ranchers. So if there's any questions about it, Gary Neuschwander in our office is contact for that, and his information is there at the bottom of the screen.
And Amy, again here, my understanding this grant is not for seafood, and so the animals is not inclusive of seafood in this case. Is that true?
That's true. This is essentially any hoofed animals. But yeah, unfortunately, a lot of these funds are not available for seafood, which is we're going to talk about how some of them can be. So obviously the farm to school producer equipment and infrastructure grant, definitely seafood is allowable for that, and there's been a lot of efforts to get more of some of the undervalued seafood products into schools. A lot of ground fish species are really suitable for school markets, and we've been trying to help foster that and help schools connect to processors on the coast and fishermen. So so that's something to think about with those farm to school dollars. Simply because schools often need mostly they all need minimal processing of seafood, but in some instances might even need more than that to be able to utilize the product. And then the resilient food system infrastructure dollars, which is what we're going to kind of go into a little bit more detail about. We can talk about how seafood can be supported in that grant.
Hey, Amy.
Yeah.
You said hoofed animals. Is that chicken out of there or chicken? How about
Not
chickens?
chicken. Chicken would not be, poultry would not be part of this. But hoofed animals like deer, bison, yeah, I think
Cool.
rabbit.
Just confirm if poultry fit. So cool.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Oh yeah, dulse is a specialty crop. Very good. So Gabrielle, you are on the call. Is that true? I think maybe she might not be on the call, but I think she's answering in the chat box because she's working. She is working today, but I think she's just not actually in the call. So I think she's just answering the team's question. That's right, Kristen. So dulse is a specialty crop, and I think we're also had some questions about was it kelp? There was another seafood product we were talking about a few weeks ago. Okay, so I'm going to pull up another slide deck here and we will start talking about the RFSI. All right, so we're going to be holding office hours over these next few weeks to talk more about the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Program. Like I said, this program is going to open January 1st. So we're going to host these regional office hour calls to allow you all to come together and talk a little bit more about projects or run ideas past us. Gabrielle Ugaldi is technically overseeing this program right now, wasn't able to join me today. So I'm going to do my best to go through
Hey, Amy, if you can hear us, I think you're muted and none of us seem to be seeing anything except for a black screen with no sound.
Oh, thanks for letting me know that. Let me see what's going on here.
It took us a few minutes to figure it out in the chat, but we all got there.
Yeah, something happened after I'm sorry, something happened after I tried to pull my PowerPoint down. And then I got this some sort of operating system issue going on, it looks like. So I'm gonna try this again. I'm sorry, just one moment. Okay, I'm really sorry, everyone. I'm having some problem with my Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to try this one other way, and then I think we may just have to have a conversation. Let's see, what are you seeing on your end?
Now we're seeing your desktop. Now we're seeing the
Okay.
presentation.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry about that. All right. So I'm going to go over, so you didn't hear anything I said about this grant program, right? Going into the
Correct.
details?
Other than it opens on January 1st. It's where we lost you.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So did you see the other slides about the meat processing grant and the farm to school infrastructure grant? You saw those, correct?
Yes,
And
we did.
Okay,
did,
and we
yeah.
had some conversation about those. All right. Okay, so since Gabrielle's not able to join us, I'm going to walk through some of these detailed slides about the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Grant, and then we will turn it over for some conversation and questions from you all for the remaining part of the time together. So I'm just going to go over what the national program is, what the RFSA program is, how Oregon's program will look, and the timeline and application process. So, so we went over this earlier, but essentially what RFSI is it's going to be it's going to basically provide hard costs for infrastructure and equipment that will support expanded capacity for aggregation, processing, manufacturing, storing, and transporting Oregon-produced foods with the overarching goal of supporting and strengthening the local and regional food system. So that's really the purpose of it. And as I mentioned earlier, it's sort of it's a complement to the regional food business centers. And, Oregon and the USDA are looking for projects that will be sourcing from some of these small and emerging farms and businesses who are utilizing the training and programming from the regional food business centers as well. So there will be an emphasis on that bridge. So the allowable crops are specialty crops, fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, herbs, basically edible crops. Dairy is also included, grains for human consumption, aquaculture, excluding meat and poultry. That should also say that wild caught seafood is also excluded. What USDA has told us, and we've asked about that a few times now, is that there are other resources to support meat and poultry and seafood that are coming out of the Food System Transformation Act. This is problematic for a variety of reasons. I think in particular, when we talk about what's necessary at the smaller scale or within a regional food system context, obviously a lot of the infrastructure that you all need supports many different types of food sectors. So I think we will need to talk about this, especially with our partners on the North Coast, and think about how these funds can support the industry up there, because seafood's such a a huge and vibrant part of the economy. So I think that there will be some allowances for these projects that support seafood, but it's likely it would not be the predominant purpose, except for those that are part of the aquaculture category. So I think we can talk a little bit more about this. Again, I went over this earlier, but these are the eligible entities under the RFSI grant. I did mention the tracks already, so this is somewhat of a repeat. There is a matching requirement only for the infrastructure track, and that is either 25% or 50%, and that can be both cash and in kind. The 25% requirement is if the organization is representative of an underserved group, and the 50% matching requirement is essentially everyone else. And I don't believe Gabrielle put the definitions in here, but we will make sure that you have the program guidelines to read through the definitions of who those groups are. This is okay. So basically, this is just describing that yes, we will have two tracks. The infrastructure grant will be a 3-year grant award. It'll be a requirement of the grantees that they will they will be reporting progress reports and final reports every year. And then the equipment grant is only expected to run for 1 year only. And so those funds will be, well, all the funds will be distributed this spring, but that will be on a 1-year term, and there'll be progress and final reports just for that 1 year. There is going to be a review committee that is a 15-member group that will be responsible for reviewing and scoring all applications and giving their recommendations to the director's office at ODA. And then this is how the funding is proposed to be broke down. And again, I think some of these buckets, especially, well, the buckets between the infrastructure and equipment can move around a little bit. But this is sort of how the money will be dispersed. $1 million is actually being held back at this moment for state-led infrastructure projects that could look like the state actually doing some feasibility work and other efforts that will, and other research efforts that will foster more regional food system development after these funds are expended. So these are the prioritized applicants. So there will be preference for, and again, these are a lot of the purpose of this and a lot of the direction is what we're following from USDA, but small and underserved business owners and historically underserved farmers and ranchers are going to be prioritized, as well as other businesses that qualify under the Small Business Administration's definitions for these groups that you see there: veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, etc. And then this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the different types of infrastructure projects that will likely the RFSI is intended to fund. But essentially, the ones that I think would be important to also take a look at are some of the worker safety pieces, particularly with new technologies. and new facility improvements, ergonomic facility improvements, I think is something that we're interested in seeing applications for. A lot of the new and federal food safety requirements. There's oftentimes a lot of processing equipment that needs to comply with those that's necessary in commercial kitchens and processing facilities. Trainings are also eligible for funding under the infrastructure. So if there's manufacturing trainings, lean manufacturing trainings, operational trainings, things like that, those would be allowable. And modernizing equipment for energy efficiency or things like that, anything that reduces greenhouse gas emissions, those are also allowable. And then other goals that are identified by the Rocky Mountain, Northwestern Rocky Mountain Foods Business Center. So anything that sort of aligns with those 4 theme areas as well would also be of priority. And then these are some of the priority examples of what would qualify under the equipment track for the grants. So I'll let you sort of just read through those. And some of those are, some of those are also duplicative of the infrastructure grants. The infrastructure grants can also include, will also include equipment. So the timeline, here's a timeline of the events for the RFSI. So the applications will open for infrastructure January 1st. Those will close at the end of February. I may have mentioned this when we were having the tech problems, but we may open the equipment grant a little bit earlier than February 1st, but it will still be open until the end of February. And then you can see on the right-hand side when the applications are expected to be reviewed and scored, and when the committee, the advisory or review committee will meet, and then when the director will make the final recommendations and decisions. So the grant work would likely not start until the end of the summer of 2024, because whatever is proposed and whatever Oregon approves needs to ultimately be approved by the USDA before the funding can be administered. So you'd be looking at starting projects probably sometime next fall. Okay, application steps. So I believe that Gabrielle was going to talk a little bit about the allowable costs in this section and really how to prepare a competitive proposal. But these are some of the things that the advisory committee will be looking at. How complete is the proposal? Obviously, are the activities allowed? Are the crops or the products that the project is focused on, are those allowable? And are those reasonable? Are the costs reasonable in terms of what you're proposing to do if it's a large infrastructure project? So how feasible is it that it can be completed within the time frame? So I think she's just going over here what will happen. And then in stage 2, the advisory committee will review this. The score sheets that are being utilized should be public as well soon, and when the application opens in January. So, that's something oftentimes applicants like to look at and have lots of questions about. So I do encourage you to join any of the virtual open office hour calls that will be coming up in January. And then, like I said, there'll be an opportunity. So leadership, ODA's director, Lisa Hansen, will be reviewing the recommendations that come from the advisory committee. And then once those are selected, they'll move on to USDA for final review. These are some of the required documentations under each grant track. And as you can see, this pretty much aligns with what you usually typically see for state or federal grants. There is a critical resource and infrastructure letter that's required that verifies the justification or rationale for why that the requests that you have, why they're necessary for the project. And then there's also for the infrastructure grant, there is a matching funds verification letter that will document how you intend to meet the matching, whether it's cash, whether it's in-kind match, and then what those sources of the match are. And so those also may be coming from other partners, which is totally fine as well. Okay, I think that's probably the end of the slide. Yes, that's the end of her slide deck. I think I'm just going to open it up for questions, or if we need to go back through any of the slides, we can do that.
This is Chantal. I just have a question about having access to that slide deck.
Yeah.
Is it something that's emailable or a link or something?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I will send out the slide deck. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Other questions, comments, project ideas that you all have that you want to discuss on this call? We also don't have to use the full time. If people feel like this is complete for them at this point, we can also jump off the call early.
Amy, what's the schedule for the office hours?
Yeah, the office hours, give me a minute here and I will pull up. So there should be a press release going out in the next few days. And so it's not public yet, but I can tell you that they will be, actually, I think I can put them in the chat box here. Let's see. Yeah, I'll put them in the chat box. So you can get those on your calendar if you'd like. And like I said, if you sign up for the Resilient Systems Grant, if you sign up, go and sign up at that email address or send a note to that email, you'll get put on the distribution list for all the announcements related to the grant, Erin, and that will include those virtual office hours, but they're also in the chat box there.
Hi, Amy. This is Brad again.
Hi, Brad.
So we are an aquaculture facility, and we will be farming them. But our seed is the starving wild-caught urchins. Will we qualify for this?
I believe so. We've asked USDA to give us a more complete description and definition of wild-caught seafood. And we are still waiting to hear back from them. And we've also asked them to give us a more complete definition of aquaculture. And they also have yet to do that. So we think yes, but we're waiting for them to confirm that.
Well, certainly hope so, because aquaculture is going to be a big part of the solution to these problems.
I
Okay,
agree.
thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Any questions about facility infrastructure or warehousing or transportation infrastructure? Things like that?
Yeah, Brad, again, you say dulse is a specialty crop, so we incorporate dulse into our recirculating system, so it cleans the water before we release it back to the estuary. So we feed the urchins, take the dirty water and put it into the kelp tank. It grows really well. And we mostly had considered it as a feed source and cleaning the water out. But we could absolutely sell it as well. Didn't really want to compete against the farmers that are starting there, but if that qualifies me, I'd sure look into it.
Yes, dulse is a specialty crop, and it can still be part of the project and not be necessarily a part of your market expansion, but it can be an input that you're using, right? So yeah, that's allowable.
Okay, well, maybe we'll try and work that angle. Thank you.
This is Chantel. I have a question that's specific to my projects, but hopefully is a broad enough question that it might help some of the other people here. So I have a small farm, and from there we do also value-added products. I have a small commercial kitchen, commissary kitchen. That's sort of the second project, and we could use, like a walk-in and a freezer to store products that North Coast Commons is transporting. So there could be more. There could be, room for us to expand and grow there. But with all of these grants that are available, I'm trying to wrap my head around sort of which grant would apply to which project, because they all are in favor of bolstering the food system. So I don't know if that's something that you could speak to, whether that's too broad a question. I'm getting all kinds of ideas about what I could do with these projects, given some extra funding. So does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does, and it's a good question. ODA does have, we can choose to prioritize investments based on specific markets for the RFSI grant. But so for example, we could prioritize, retail markets for the use of these funds. However, we're not doing that. And so, I would say that we're also not intending to crosswalk applicants from RFSI and from the other grant program. So if one of you, if you're intending to apply for the farm to school producer equipment and infrastructure grant, you're also allowed to apply for the RFSI funding. It doesn't put you at a disadvantage to have applications in both. Now, your projects would need to be distinctive of one another, but that would be okay. That would be okay to do. And I would say that, for anything that you're focusing on production, on the production side, so basically, everything pre-harvest, I would focus for yours, maybe for the Salmonberry farm on, for the farm to school grant. But I will also say that, the RFSI funding is really intended to support more than one producer. And in some ways, sometimes, not all the time, but that's also can be a strength of the farm to school producer grant too, is that, the project's going to help benefit more than one producer, and it's going to help efficiencies across that supply chain of aggregation with more than one producer, and especially within the middle of the supply chain. I think that's what they're expecting, is that again, the RFSI funding will do that. So, you know, if the project's really going to be about shoring up one business or helping to support, you know, one aspect of your farm, then, you know, it may, you know, you may be more competitive in the farm to school track or in that grant program than the RFSI, unless you're working with, you know, many different partners and multiple producers. Does that help?
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much.
We were talking about the score sheet, but I will tell you that in the score sheet, you know, there will be criteria that includes how the project focuses on small and medium-sized enterprises that add options and choices for consumers. And especially there'll be an emphasis on value-added products, and that can be minimally processed fruits and vegetables. Just so that's clear, and also some of the other products. This is where I think some of the conversation around whether you're making a product that includes, you know, seafood and other ingredients would still be eligible, and I think it will be, again, as long as as long as seafood is not, and again, we need to get a little bit more clarification from USDA, but as long as wild caught seafood, again, once we hear them tell us exactly what is included in that, that those costs aren't exclusively for that. So, you know, if there's an interest in making value-added products that include seafood and other crops that are eligible, I think those are suitable. Some of the other criteria that's in the score sheet is around the local support for the project. So, you know, are there letters of support? How are other partners or community organizations or public governments or economic development groups, how are they going to be involved? And then how does it support underserved communities? So those are some of the groups that, again, USDA is asking, you know, that there be an emphasis on beginning farmers and ranchers, veteran producers of color, and those other socially disadvantaged, what they're calling socially disadvantaged business enterprises as defined by the SBA. So, you know, those are sort of some of the kind of those are some of the main areas that you will want your project to include. Persistent poverty, there's also a category for persistent poverty regions, and I know there are pockets of persistent poverty or high unemployment on the North Coast, and those would also be preferential areas. Other questions?
It's Chantel. I might have missed it, but do we or could we have access to the score sheet, or is that not something that's shared?
The score sheet will be available in the application material. And the applications will open, I think the first week in January is when they're expected to open. The applications will be available in English, Spanish, and Swahili. And those score sheets, yes, should be in the application. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm putting a couple of, here is the web page. I just dropped this in the chat box for the resilient food system infrastructure. And you can find all the materials there for the application when it goes live. And then I also encourage you to sign up for announcements. And that is Resilient Systems Grant. Let's see. I think it's Resilient Systems Grant at ODA.Oregon. So you'll want to send an email to that general inbox, and that should sign you up for all the grant announcements that'll be coming very soon. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I will close the call. If you have any questions, you can always send them to me. I'm just dropping my email in the chat box, or again, you can reach out to the Resilient Food Systems grant program, and we'll make sure to get your questions answered. I'll also share the slide deck with you, and also the program scope and requirements document, which I believe is on the webpage, but I'll go ahead and just attach that in the email as well. That's really got all the, as they say, the devil's in the details. So you'll want to read through that as well. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. We'll also send out the recording or get the recording posted. It'll probably go on the ODA YouTube channel, and then we can send you the link as well. And thanks for bearing with me as I muddled through this on my own today. And have a great weekend. We will talk to you all later.
Thanks so much for all the information.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks, Amy. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Amy. Bye.
Thank you.